Hello, today we're going to be going over feminist criminology, also known as feminist psychological theory. My name is Cheyenne, and I'm going to be joined by Lori and Andy. Okay, so the prompt we're going to be going over today is from Gillespie's 1989 published book called Justifiable Homicide. So why do women who kill their abusive partners often found guilty of murder? So in other words, in addition to the way the laws are written, what are some other reasons why women are often found guilty of murder when they kill their abusive partners?
I'm going to be talking about the criminal justice system bias, specifically in the chapter we were assigned to read, When Women Fight Back. And Glips argues that the law of self defense was created by and for men, reflecting the short instances of violence that men happen to receive or create, rather than the long term, private, and often life threatening abuse and the sort of violence that women experiences. And this is often shown when police minimize or ignore domestic violence, treating it more as a private matter than like a serious crime. This can be seen in the chapter in pages 1 through 4, with specifically the Caroline Scott case, where police arrested her for murder even though she had endured 8 years of abuse and shot her abuser or her husband. And the judge refused to let the jury consider self defense as an option and just simply called it murder.
Patriarchy and structural power within feminist criminology. Feminist criminologists see patriarchy as a system of male dominance that shapes how crime and justice are defined. Basically, the law and the courtroom were built around male experiences of violence. Because of that, women's experiences often don't fit into the legal definitions that already exist. For example, self defense laws were made with the idea of a sudden physical attack in mind, not the long term abuse and fear that many women experience in domestic situations. On top of that, patriarchal norms often frame women as emotional or irrational, which can make them seem less credible in court. So even when women defend themselves, they're not always believed or treated fairly. And then that connects directly to Gillespie's research. Gillespie found that women who killed their abusive partners were punished especially harshly. Instead of recognizing their actions as survival, the court saw them as vengeful or unfeminine. So overall, patriarchy shapes not just who gets punished, but how their actions are interpreted. Next, I'm going to talk about gender norms and the criminalization of resistance. So, society often socializes women to be submissive, forgiving, and quiet. So, when women resist or fight back against abuse, it's seen as breaking both the law and traditional gender expectations. Feminist criminologists argue that women are sometimes punished not only for what they did, but for not acting the way society expects women to act. The media and courtroom narratives reflect that, labeling these women as cold or vindictive it's not just about their actions, it's about the idea that they've stepped outside what's considered proper female behavior. And again, this connects to Gillespie's findings. Judges and juries often ask, why didn't she just leave? But that question completely ignores how hard leaving actually is, the financial barriers, the emotional manipulation, and the very real fear for their safety. So instead of being seen as victims trying to survive, these women are portrayed as violent or unstable. That's how gender norms can literally criminalize resistance. And finally, feminist criminology isn't just about identifying problems, but it's also about finding solutions. Feminist scholars argue that justice systems should consider context, power, and lived experiences when judging cases, especially those involving gendered violence. Some reforms they propose include allowing expert testimony about the psychology of abuse, redefining imminent threat to include ongoing coercive control, not just immediate physical danger, and expanding support services so women can escape abusive situations before violence escalates. The goal is to build a justice system that recognizes the realities of gendered violence, one that treats women's survival strategies as acts of protection, not crimes.
Now we're going to be talking about prosecutors and misrepresentation. So prosecutors often ignore sexual violence at all and often use stereotypes to convince juries that women act out of jealousy or rage, or, as Professor Green mentioned, masculism, where they liked the abuse they were getting, and like they may have quote unquote exaggerated their injuries or lie or just basically use it to completely ignore women at all. And this can be seen in page 24 with the Linda Array case. After enduring several years of rape and abuse, the prosecutor told the jury that her injuries were part of a quote unquote loving game, which I think that they could have maybe possibly been putting in as a sexual use, like she liked it sexually. And this convinced them to convict her of manslaughter instead of acquitting her for self-defense, because in my opinion, the prosecutor convinced the jury that she liked it and probably was okay with it, which I obviously disagree. And now I'm going to be talking about the judicial and legal barriers that we see when it comes to feminist criminology. And obviously, I'm going to be leading this back to when women fight back. So, judges often refuse to allow self defense. Experts or people that can, under maybe psychologists, I would assume, testimony on battered women syndrome, or just, another one I can think of is Stockholm syndrome, where people go through severe abuse and because of this they are mentally altered, and this prevents juries from understanding the psychological and physical realities of abuse, mainly the psychological. And judges may see women as needing help or counseling rather than recognizing them as a victim who needed to survive. They believe women need help, right? Like women just need to go see a doctor to get help. They don't deserve to be seen as a victim and somebody who survived this horrendous event. This can also again be seen in the Caroline Scott case, as the judge not allowing to the jury to even consider self-defense. And they were told to choose between guilty or not guilty, ensuring that she got a conviction no matter what, and self-defense was just taken off the table in general.
So, if we go beyond the law, how do biases convict women who do fight back? And from Gillespie's book, specifically from the chapter Women Who Fight Back, I really enjoyed this quote. And the quote says, "Our society is simply unwilling to grant to women the same right of self defense that it grants to men." And this was found on page 4 of the book. So, society teaches women to be passive and dependent. Therefore, if women decide to fight back, it is seen as unnatural, unfeminine, and in general out of character. And police often treat abuse as domestic quarrel rather than a crime, sometimes even coercing confessions out of victims, such as an instance seen with Joyce Hawthorne's case, as it turned into police manipulating her exhaustion and fear for her children in order to force a false confession. And I definitely recommend reading into this chapter a little bit more if you haven't. The story is very sad and um, intriguing as well. And I'll share just a little bit, but I highly recommend looking into it a bit more. So, just to get a better understanding of the picture, Joyce shot her abusive husband after a sleepless night of being threatened. And police arrested her in the middle of the night and ignored her lawyer's advice that she were to remain silent. And an officer by the name of Dunn course, a confession out of Joyce and promised she would be released if she talked. So Joyce had been up for over 36 hours, had not eaten for 24 hours. So, her being exhausted, hungry, and terrified, she finally confessed. And thankfully, on appeal, her conviction was overturned. And because the courts found her rights to be grossly violated, she was allowed a new trial where her statements from the police were not admissible. So, women who are punished not only for killing, but refusing to remain victims. Lastly, I'm going to be talking about media and society on trial. And for one of these instances, I will be talking about an article called The Killing Excuse that was posted in November of 1977. And this headline specifically, and just the article in general, framed women's self-defense as manipulation. And around the same time this article was published, public outrage over Francine Hughes reinforced the idea that women should stay victims and not defenders. And I would highly recommend reading that part of um, Gillespie's book as well. I found it really interesting. And basically, media narratives reinforce stereotypes that good women endure abuse quietly, and those who resist are dangerous. So basically, Gillespie illustrates that courtrooms are not the only place where women are judged. Media turned stories into national debates about what a good woman should be, and articles such as A Killing Excuse made it seem as if self defense was manipulation and not a form of survival that women have to endure. And in this case, fueled public anger, therefore enforcing the idea that women who do fight back are stepping out of line. And lastly, we have the works cited page. We used the book within the chapter When Women Fight Back from Gillespie's book, Justifiable Homicide, Battered Woman, Self-Defense, and the Law. Thank you for watching and listening.